Chelsea, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. My name is Chelsea Milko, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's wonderful to see everyone's faces and meet everyone from around the world. Yes, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Uganda. It's a country in East Africa. And I was there from 2010 to 2013. So it was several years ago. But the memories are still very fresh, and the skills that I took from that experience still are with me. And I look forward to answering your questions, Gregory and others on this chat.
Thank you. So my first question is for Chelsea, and then I'll open it up to everyone. But in what ways could a country benefit from a Peace Corps volunteer?
That's a great question, and thank you for that. I really think that countries can benefit a lot from a Peace Corps volunteer. Um, I'll first start off by explaining what the Peace Corps is, and that is it's a organization that was founded by President Kennedy in the 1960s, and it started as a organization of American volunteers who could sign up and apply, and they were sent overseas and to serve in a country for 27 months. And from the early 1960s until today, that is still the way we do things in the Peace Corps. And the goals of the Peace Corps are three. There are three goals of the Peace Corps. It's to promote world peace and friendship by number one, helping interested countries in meeting their needs with trained American volunteers. Number two is to promote a better understanding of Americans like me to people overseas. And number three, it's when Americans come back from the Peace Corps and they come back to the United States, it's to promote a better understanding of those host countries and host nationals to Americans. So those are the goals, and that's a brief history of the Peace Corps. I encourage you guys after this conversation to go and learn more about what the Peace Corps is. But you have to be an American to do it. Every Peace Corps experience is different. Every project is unique. Every country is unique, quite honestly. And Peace Corps volunteers come from all backgrounds and parts of the United States. But what they have in common is that they're motivated by service, and they want to serve people overseas and promote world peace and friendship. So those are good values, I think, that a lot of nations value, and a lot of people, perhaps on this call, you also value. Um, and I think some of the lessons that Peace Corps volunteers can, or the knowledge and background Peace Corps volunteers can bring to your country or other countries around the world is really unique. They have skills in development, in agriculture, education, teaching English, healthcare. In my instance, I was a radio volunteer. So I worked at a radio station for 3 years in Uganda, and I taught journalists and I taught media skills and did community outreach through radio. So we bring really good skills and backgrounds, but we also bring a perspective about the United States, and an interest in learning from people like you and exchanging ideas with people like you. So there is definitely capacity building that is a benefit to your countries, but also it's really honestly the people to people connections and the friendships that we build that last a lifetime.
Thank you. So I'm curious for our audience, have any of you met a Peace Corps volunteer or heard about the program? I think a lot of Americans are familiar with the program, but I'm not sure how large it is in other countries. It's not a super large program, right? It's about 10,000 people a year or so, from what I understand.
Yeah. Exactly. That's about as big as it gets. Usually fluctuates a couple thousand plus or minus. And there's some countries that can, you know, invite more volunteers than other countries. Um, every volunteer is invited by the host country. So Peace Corps doesn't operate in a country unless it's invited by the government. So, you know, it's an understanding that we have with our host country, that we are there to help them, and to bring some ideas and some skills. In Uganda, where I served, there were about 150 volunteers spread around the country. And it's a rather small country compared to other African nations or other nations where you guys come from. um, but we were all ready to serve, and we were placed in a variety of host organizations. And we were, I think it's important to know that we come with a lot of training, and we come really well vetted, as well. So we don't come into a country and just say, "Hey, I'm here to help. Where do I go?" We are recruited for our skills, and we receive several weeks of training, and we learn the language that we go into the country to serve. So, for instance, Mohammed, you're in Indonesia. Our volunteers in Indonesia learn Bahasa. And then, Alfredo, we have volunteers in Mexico that learn Spanish. So, all over the globe, we have volunteers speaking varieties of languages. And I even learned a small, like dialect, a tribal language in Uganda that not a lot of people uh, can speak. Usually, I can't find a speaker of the language of Ateso where I go. In Uganda, it's a popular, well-spoken language. So um, it was really effective, and an effective tool for all volunteers is to learn the language of their country. And that really helps them integrate and share and communicate better, and ultimately be more effective.
Thank you, Chelsea. So we had a few terms that I want to make sure we know so we can understand what Chelsea is saying. So could someone explain what a volunteer is, or to volunteer?
Someone work for no pay.
Oh, go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
Someone work for something for no pay.
Yes, exactly. So there's a work element, and there's a either like it's for free, you're doing it to benefit someone without expecting something in return. Maybe learning a new skill is something that you can gain, but there is payment sometimes. So in the Peace Corps, there is a financial. You do receive some wages or earnings, along with other benefits. There was another term, so host. Could someone explain what a host is? Someone who hosts someone.
Yeah. Is it a person or organization that gives helps to these people that are doing this kind of social work in each country?
Yes, yeah. So they welcome them. There's also like an actor involved. So you have someone who is working with someone, and they're supporting them and providing like housing is usually what we think of, stuff like that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
So
welcome.
vet, have we heard of vet before? To vet someone. I'll explain. To vet someone is to look into their background, their skills, their history. It could include like criminal history, to make sure that they would be a good person for a role, that they have the knowledge and stuff like that.
What was the word, Greg?
To vet.
Too bad.
And
Okay.
the last word I would like to explain, so we're on the same page, is to recruit. So Chelsea said that they recruit volunteers. Have people heard of this word before, or has people?
Yes. Recruiting means to employ someone, or to have someone as an employee or as a volunteer, and before that we evaluate their documents and their abilities. Then, according to our standards, then we recruit them to work with us and be as a volunteer or employee.
Yes, yeah. So businesses can recruit. The army recruits as well. That's a popular word for the army. So it's like finding people to work for you or volunteer for you. Okay, so now that we understand some of the terms involved with Peace Corps, I want Chelsea, could you talk more about the benefits that a country could receive?
Yes, of course. There's a lot of benefits. I think that you could divide the benefits into two categories or two parts. The first set of benefits is the kind of skills related benefits, the information, the capacity building that a Peace Corps volunteer provides to a host community and a host organization. Be it, how to teach English in a classroom, how to plant a organic garden, how to increase, yields of crops, or how to develop, a new nonprofit organization dedicated to women and children. So there's a variety of different skills that a Peace Corps volunteer could bring that would benefit a host community. On the other side, there is sort of the perspective and the American experience and the stories that a Peace Corps volunteer brings to a community. I think that often was how I connected with many of my community members, is that they wanted to know my story, my background, where I came from, my family life, what it was like to be an American. They had a lot of curious questions about that. So there is obviously the capacity building and the skills transfer, but there's also the perspective about what it is to be an American. So those are a couple of the benefits that a Peace Corps volunteer could bring.
Thank you, Chelsea. So I'm curious with the audience, are there things in your country that you think that a volunteer could help improve, or is there something that you see a Peace Corps volunteer in your country helping? Alfredo?
Yeah, in my view, I think there are many things to do in Mexico. We need some kind of organizations of people, for example, to clean the forest. No? We need people in Mexico to teach in rural communities, Spanish, to teach any kind of subjects. Yeah. And yeah, there are many things to do, especially in rural areas, no, in Mexico. So I want to ask Chelsea, if I can, if she can write the links of these peace organizations or peace corporations, because I like to see, I like to take a look and see if I can do something to help people, to host, to help people that are volunteers, or to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'm happy to put the link to the Peace Corps website, so you can find out more information. They do, in Mexico, there is the Peace Corps office in Mexico City.
Perfect.
And, they are in charge of connecting with hosts around other parts of Mexico and making sure, that they receive a volunteer, if they're eligible to receive one, that they receive one that fits their needs and is a good match. So it's quite possible that, there might be a Peace Corps volunteer who can serve near you or with you. So, but yeah, I'll post it right now in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chelsea.
That actually reminds me that today's episode was thought of because of an article that I wrote about Peace Corps volunteers that I'm going to send as well, if you'd like to take a look. So during COVID, sorry about that. During COVID, they stopped the Peace Corps, but it will be returning soon. So that was what the article was about.
I think based on our situation in Afghanistan, I'm from Afghanistan, most of the activity that Peace Corps volunteers can do, or they can arrange them, we need their activity, but I don't know that these volunteers are active in Afghanistan or not. But as you know, in our country, in Afghanistan, we have here is a war situation. War is ongoing, and the handover and the takeover process. The Taliban are taking over the power in Afghanistan, and we have lots of internal and external refugees, and all of them needs help. And this kind of volunteers, Peace Corps volunteers, can help them. And I think we we can feel their positive effect on our society, and I think we need them in our country right now.
Yeah, I'm sure there could be a lot of positive things that a volunteer could do in Afghanistan.
There were Peace Corps volunteers in Afghanistan in the early years, in the 1960s and 70s, but for various security reasons, the Peace Corps organization decided to end its program there. But it would be wonderful someday, I think, to see Peace Corps volunteers return to Afghanistan. That would be a good sign of good development and progress.
We hope so. We hope.
Thank you. David, did you want to say something?
Yes, yes. In Colombia, is the common the volunteer people, especially or mainly in the remote areas, mainly in the rural areas, for teach the people to read or learn the new skill for the society. Other volunteer work in building house for poor people in Colombia. It's common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. There have been volunteers in Colombia for a long time. And in Colombia and in other parts of the world, it's very common, like Alfredo was saying, for volunteers to go to rural areas, because that tends to be where the most need is, where the most poverty is. So we get placed in small villages all the way out. Some people might not even be able to get there. We could be 10 hours from the capital city, and you have to take the chicken bus to get there, or 5 chicken buses. But, you know, Peace Corps volunteers are not afraid of that. You know, I took many buses to get from my village to the capital if I ever had to go to Kampala. So, you know, they send us wherever there is need.
Uh, Hello, everybody. My name is Elida. Yes, I would like to talk a little bit about volunteer in Peru. So, because I am from Peru, so in Peru as well too, similar to Alfredo, yeah, said, we have here as well too. We want some volunteers in education because we have some small towns where we don't have teachers to help students to teach different areas, for example, mathematics, maybe English as well too, and like that. So it's important to be volunteer because we can work freely. Exactly, it's not for money, and it's important because it's a kind of activity and that can help a lot of people. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
But yeah, teaching is a really great example where I think education is an important factor and skill that people need. Mohammed, what would you like to say?
Okay, thank you, Greg. And I want to talk about volunteer that program in Indonesia, especially when the coronavirus spread and everyone is in panic and there's a lot of victim. I mean, people are infected coronavirus and the number is exploded. And yeah, Indonesia really need some volunteer to uh, give the food like everything what is need for the people who are infected in COVID-19, and it is thank to the God, so our number is decreased. I mean for the infected one. So that's all.
Yeah, I could imagine that the Peace Corps would want to shift more into healthcare after the pandemic. That I could really see would be a good thing to improve.
Mm-hmm. On that topic of healthcare and the coronavirus pandemic, the volunteers who were deployed and sent out last year, they were all required to come home at the beginning of the pandemic for safety reasons. But those who wanted were given options this year to help with vaccine efforts and response efforts domestically in the United States. So that was an easier way, I think, for Peace Corps to respond to the immediate need here in the United States. But I do believe that they are sending now some people, response volunteers, who are like a small set of individuals to specific countries. So they're going to be increasing their numbers and launching more programs again. And I do believe healthcare will be a priority because, you know, we can see what effect the pandemic had on healthcare.
Yes, thank you. So I think I'm going to shift into a new topic. So along the lines of being a guest and a host, in what ways could a Peace Corps volunteer be a good guest?
That's a great question. I'll answer that question from my perspective. So when I was placed in my community, I was assigned to a school for the blind as a community economic development volunteer. So my assignment was to help that school for the blind develop projects that can help increase economic sustainability for the school and for the community. So one of the ways that we, um, you know, I helped serve that need was to develop a poultry project for the community. And the you know, what I did was I actually listened to the hosts before I did any projects, before I brought any ideas, before I did anything. I actually tried to listen, to talk to my hosts, to communicate to them, to find out what their needs were, and to include them in every step of the way. So they were really great hosts for me because they allowed me to take some time to get to know the place, to get to know the language, to get to know the environment, and they gave me the space to work with them and the understanding and the patience to work with them and develop projects that could, you know, serve the community. So we built a poultry house, a big poultry house. We brought in turkeys to raise and to help generate income by selling the turkeys to people in the community. So my hosts were wonderful because they really were patient and understanding, and they were good at expressing what they wanted me to help with.
Thank you. So I'm curious with the audience, in what ways do you think a Peace Corps volunteer could be a good guest in your country? So in what ways do you think they could respect people in your country might be another way to think of it?
So I think, as Ms. Milko said, the first step is listening to them. First, we should evaluate and find their problems, their needs, and then take action. So I think the first step should be listening and listening to them, and then we start to make a plan based on our abilities and our staffs that we have, and then we take action for help them.
Yes, which is, I think, what Chelsea was talking about was that she would make sure that she was uh, sharing her ideas, but also listening to their ideas as well.
Thank you, Greg. Could I ask Chelsea a question?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Yes, I really, I think the volunteer program from Peace Corps really helpful for the country, especially people in needed wherever they live from every aspects. But I would like to ask a question. When volunteers left, how to keep the program or the volunteer job in a sustainable way? Because we see a lot in the world. For example, right now, even in Afghanistan, America as a government, as a military, stay there 20 years. But once a withdraw, the all things collapse and returned back to something. I do not comment good or bad, but I would like to say how to keep this program in a sustainable way, and the people in need really learn something, or how to do things, keep their life in a better, in a future after the volunteers left. Is there any evaluation system to evaluate the program? They're really good, and really good for the people in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Helen. And I understand you're joining us from China, so I just added the link to the Peace Corps program in China and what they do there. So most volunteers there teach English. That's mostly the majority of the program there. So your question is connected, is really about how do we evaluate how effective Peace Corps is, and how do we share skills that people can use they can carry with them for the rest of their lives. That is really the point of the Peace Corps, is to transfer skills and knowledge to hosts in our communities there, with skills that they can actually use for the rest of their lives. We want it to be sustainable. We want it to be localized. We want it to be something that's that is really for the community, and it is culturally sensitive. So there's a lot of things that we focus on as volunteers to make sure that a project is successful and it lives on beyond our time in that host country. So that's one of the ways we ensure that that the work can continue. Also, there's a lot of people who evaluate Peace Corps' overall effectiveness in a country or worldwide, in Washington, D.C. and other places. So we're always monitoring. Peace Corps as an organization is always monitoring, does it make sense for us to remain in a country when they reach a certain level of development? Our mission is really to almost volunteer ourselves out of a job. We don't want to stay in a country forever if we don't have to. If they improve in certain categories and in certain areas, like in education and maternal health and sustainable agriculture, we actually might decide that the program is no longer needed. And sometimes host countries decide that for us as well. They'll say, thank you for your time here, but we feel that we have, received all that we can from you at this point. So, there's always an evaluation and a conversation happening about that. But there's been a number of countries where we have had volunteers in the past, and then they actually improve the quality of life. Overall the country it develops, and we end up leaving because we're no longer needed. So that's the long-term goal.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question.
Yes, thank you. So Alfredo, I would like you to give your response, and then we'll be out of time soon, and I want to allow people to ask questions if they have any.
Yes.
Alfredo, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Greg. I think that, in my view, one of the main points to keep a good relation between the Peace Corps and the host is for the Peace Corps to respect their traditions, their religion, and the way that they are. I don't know if you watched that movie, The Maasai Queen. So if you didn't watch that movie, it's a nice one, no? Because it shows that what this girl tried to do in a town in Africa, and she couldn't, because their traditions, their beliefs, and the religions about these people. No? So, in my view, one of the points to consider for a Peace Corps is to respect their beliefs and traditions.
That's a great point. It is very important for Peace Corps and for the volunteers to be respectful of the culture and norms and values of a country, and to design projects with that in mind. Because as you guys learned here in the chat, we want the projects to be sustainable, able to continue over a long period of time. And one of the best ways to do that is to respect the host country and the community and what they believe is important.
David, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question related with the word like volunteer. Chelsea, what has been your bigger challenge in your work as volunteer?
That's a great question. There were a lot of challenges that I encountered as a volunteer, but sometimes it was maybe a language barrier. Other times it was just maybe getting sick with malaria. I experienced that twice while I was a volunteer. sometimes it's just, maybe it was dry season and it was very hot in my part of Uganda. So it was hard to move around and to do anything. And you felt, you just wanted to stay inside and escape the heat. So there were a lot of challenges that I would face on a day-to-day basis. But I learned to just be flexible and be patient with myself and stay positive. And, it really helped that I was integrating with the community, connecting with my community members through language, through conversation, through my daily work, because that actually was a good way for me to overcome challenges and to be successful. I actually relied on the people around me, and it really helped.
Thank you.
Thank you. Helen has another question. Go ahead, Helen.
Thank you, Greg. Hi, Chelsea. I would like to ask a question. I would like to know what kind of standard or measures to selecting a country by providing volunteer service or volunteers to what kind of country, and how do you know, especially the Peace Corps organization, know what kind of skills or service or volunteers jobs that country really need? Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That's another great question. Yes, so it's a multi-step process to evaluate a volunteer and their skills and match them with the right country and the right community. So when a country wants to be a Peace Corps country, they invite Peace Corps to come to the country, and Peace Corps workers and country representatives talk to each other, and they agree upon the goals of the program in that country. So for instance, in China, the goals that everyone has agreed on is that Peace Corps volunteers will mostly teach English. That is a skill that the Chinese people want, and we are willing to provide. So there is that agreement that happens between Peace Corps and the host country. And then when you go further down at the local level, Peace Corps also works with the host organization to identify what their needs are, and then will match them with the appropriate volunteer. It doesn't always work out 100%, it may not be a perfect match, but that's one of the whole, benefits of Peace Corps, is that it teaches everyone flexibility and understanding, and an ability to adapt. So, I never worked at a school for the blind, for people who cannot see. I never built a turkey chicken project before with my community ever, but I had basic skills and a desire to help, and my community had the desire to work with me and to be patient and understanding. So together we worked it out and we were successful.
Let's all say thank you thank you to Chelsea for joining us today. I definitely learned a lot and I appreciated it. So thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.